Welcome to another attempt at creating a game from scratch in 48 hours. As you probably know from my previous documentaries, it's never easy. But this time it seemed I caught a break and started from a better position. I had a theme that did not suck.
I know.
A healthy sleeping rhythm, an inspired idea, no distractions, and plenty of time. Naturally, things were bound to derail at some point. This is the Post Mortem of my Ludum Dare 48 game, Descentris. I was very exhausted even before the jam started. My office was tidy, as was my desktop and my schedule. A few days prior, I had premiered my previous Postmortem on YouTube, and there were hundreds of comments to reply to. Thanks so much for watching, everyone! As you know, I'm very vocal about my dislike of the theme. Any theme. Hell, I even had these stickers printed. Themes are community submitted and chosen, though this time I decided to stay out of it. I neither submitted theme suggestions nor voted. Whatever the mudslinging mob would gravitate towards, I would enjoy blissful ignorance right up to the announcement. Also, my sleeping rhythm had changed thanks to, and I went to bed early. When the theme got announced at 3 a.m. local time, I already was on a dream quest to the unknown. That, of course, didn't mean that my nightly respite was free of night gaunts haunting me in my sleep. I dreamed that the theme was video is many, and that I hated it. No need for a psychoanalyst with such obvious symbolism. I needed to know how bad my day would be, and went straight to Twitter. The community had agreed on deeper and deeper as the theme, and I felt not that annoyed actually. It was not great, but it was fine. Just fine. After my physical exercises, I took care of my mental health. Connie and I prepared breakfast that we would enjoy on the balcony to cherish the beautiful sunshine. So far, the jam had gone exceptionally well. Maybe I should do this more often. Or maybe just have breakfast every day. When Connie had left for a lengthy walk, I engaged in work, squeezing out ideas the old way, with pen on paper. First, I sorted my conjectures by things you can go deep in. The earth, water, trouble, space, etc., and tried to come up with a line or two for each. I sketched something reminiscent of the obscure shareware game 6 Feet Under I played a lot back in '94.
Extra time!
This was all nice and well, until I realized that I had invented Spelunky. Poorly. I hit rock bottom. Different approach. Think like a game designer. What's a fun digging mechanic? Mining blocks in Minecraft? That's not the actual appeal of Minecraft, is it? Fallout Shelter? That's more about management. Think different. Building games are fun. What could Sim Tower look like when reversed? Probably too complex. What's the simplest building game I know? Yes, Tetris. Think about it. All you do is build towers and complete lines until there's no more room. How can I invert the Tetris mechanics? Completing lines would make no sense, but avoiding obstacles, maybe? Reverse Tetris. That was the kernel of my idea I put on paper. Even at this early stage, most features were already there. Unbreakable blocks, bonus items, points. I realized that my ideas wouldn't improve beyond this point, and I switched my brain from idea mode to programming mode. Already, I saw a few conceptual problems that I needed to solve, such as choice of data structures, how to best handle scrolling, player input, and rotating all the Tetris blocks. I had never made such a mechanics-centered game before and felt slightly overwhelmed. But getting up early afforded me the leeway to take a chance. I could give it an hour to find out. I talked with Connie about my coding challenges, and she helped me a lot by just listening and asking the right questions.
Ich find's gut. Mach das.
With that, I felt prepared, and also well caffeinated, to get cracking. Again, I chose good old Game Maker for my prototype. 12 hours into the jam, I had a solid scaffolding in place and fully committed to this idea of a reversed Tetris. But could my game run into problems of a different kind? I had to find out. The Tetris Holding LLC owns the worldwide rights to Tetris, and they are known to be very litigious. You really don't want to step on their toes. I read up on the Tetris Holding v. ZU Interactive case to understand what elements precisely constituted the infringement. From what I gathered, it's okay to have tetrominos in a game without Tetris mechanics, as long as they aren't placed in a 10x20 matrix, don't have distinct bright colors, and aren't called tetriminos.
Registered trademark.
My playfield would have different dimensions, all shapes would be of the same color, and my game's pieces would not consist exclusively of pieces made of exactly 4 connected blocks. On a technical side, I had trusted one-dimensional arrays for grid-based playfields ever since programming my first game, Finesweeper. But for years I have been eyeing the DS grid data structure in GameMaker. It might turn out badly. Nonetheless, I put all my eggs into that basket from the start. What could go wrong? At hour 13, I got the basic board creation working, where statistics determine whether a tile would be an obstacle or not. The next thing proper game devs tackle after the very first mechanic is, say it with me, a title screen. Yes, so that's where my energy went to next. The name of the game being Deeptris at this point. Things went incredibly smoothly, and adding the feature to go deeper and deeper was also quickly implemented by moving all instances upward and shifting their positions in the data structure at once. I also implemented the pieces the game would provide you with as DS Grid. I grew to like it. What I enjoy about programming is that it's constant puzzle solving on many levels. For example, I needed to rotate a grid of arbitrary size in 90-degree steps. Visualizing a problem always helps me find a specific solution, and then gradually generalize it. This function is the result of an hour of blood, sweat, and brain juices. And that was when I got my first whiff of complications, as drawing the right part of a piece over the mouse pointer didn't work correctly for some reason. Neither could I reliably place it in the playfield's data structure. You see, I was having two grids of equal dimensions in memory at a time. One held all the values, whether a tile was uncovered or solid. The other stored references to the actual tiles whose sprites you would see on screen. Keeping them both in sync became increasingly problematic, but I hope to get through the thick of it and never have to touch it ever again. It only got worse. By 7:10, I had to rework this entire setup and keep just one grid to hold both value and reference to the actual instance in a small array. An hour later, it was still glitchy but largely working. After 6 hours of actual programming, the game was functional, but not a lot of fun. Mostly because there was only one piece to place. Up to this point, the T-tetromino had looked like this in the code. That was fine for a single piece, but adding more would be a hassle. I came up with a method that allowed me to design the pieces on paper and manually encode them in a string that my game could easily parse. The first two digits denote the dimensions of the grid. The remaining characters define whether a cell is empty, 0, or filled, 1. As I played, I noticed that sometimes my statistical level generation algorithm grouped obstacles in such a way that made them impassable. I could have tweaked it, but a more fun and quicker way was to add bombs to blast your way through. All the features I had at this point were working, and I felt like I needed to make the game harder by adding unbombable blocks of granite that would start to appear at a certain depth. That and additional pieces. And I was losing track of all the things I still wanted to add. I put my thoughts down. Things such as a tutorial stage, chests to crack open with bombs, and lore ? Importantly, I added a vital aspect to ensure the longevity of a game like this: scorekeeping. That also implied to give players incentives to hunt for a better score. In practice, that was achieved by another block type that would display a gem and award points. Still, I felt that the game was lacking something. I mean, do you know the feeling when you're out spelunking in Minecraft and the procedural terrain opens up into something unexpected with a lot more structure to it, like the abandoned mineshafts? I wanted players to experience that kind of discovery, a handcrafted problem for them to overcome between all the random blocks. Thus, I had my next task carved out for me: coming up with a way to create and insert these custom chunks into the level. It works like this. The playing field extends quite a bit beyond the bottom of your screen. As you advance the screen, the game comes up with a new set of tiles, each created at random. What I had added then was the chance to insert a random, pre-made chunk instead. I wanted to design these chunks visually, but coding a level editor would have been too out of scope even for me at this point. My solution was to promote Notepad++ to Level Editor. and parse the resulting strings to chunks the game would understand. Much like with the playing pieces before. A dot represents diggable soil, an X an obstacle, an asterisk a gem, and a question mark picks a random tile. Remember 6 Feet Under, the game I mentioned earlier? As I was recording the gameplay footage for this Postmortem, I also looked at that game's level files, and interestingly, they are stored in a similar way. I was just 27 years late. Okay, it is now 2:30 in the morning, so 12.5 hours still to go. And I got a game. It still looks like crap, but from all the features, I think I got pretty much everything in there. The rest is just polishing. I have a very bad feeling about this. All of this went way too smoothly, and I don't trust it. I will head to bed now, because my energy is pretty much depleted. But yeah, it's a game. And for the first time since Ludum Dare 36, I went to bed without the sun already up. Sunday seemed to live up to its name. The weather was as beautiful as the day before, when I got up around 11. There was even a slice of apple pie waiting for me. I rushed doing my exercises and making coffee. Oh, hello, Spider Girl. Want some coffee too? Another breakfast on the balcony put me in great spirits. I could afford the rest of the remaining time to polish like crazy. The first order of business was to create a proper atmosphere for polish. I can't evaluate colors and visuals with the sun interfering.
Since the beginning of time, man has yearned to destroy the sun. I will do the next best thing.
Block it out. My polishing process looks like this. I take a screenshot of my game's current state, bring it to Photoshop and do a paint over, or drag UI elements around until I arrive at something I don't hate. It wasn't all butterflies and unicorns. For once, Photoshop crashed and took 40 minutes of tweaks with it into the abyss. Then I learned that there was already a game with the witty name of Descentris on Google's Play Store. It looks a lot like the old DOS game Blockout, if any of you have ever heard of that. I took that opportunity to redesign the title screen. I fiddled about for too long and still wasn't satisfied with it. To make actual progress, I put new tiles in place of the programmer art, but felt that it too had taken up too much time for what it was. But that's okay, with 13 hours still on the clock. Thus I decided I could afford to pick the lowest hanging fruit to make one's game juicy. Particle systems. I hadn't tinkered with them in 6 years, and it was no surprise that I flushed even more time down the drain until they worked and looked right. Back to something more productive. Back to redesigning my tiles. Getting these diagonal stripes seamless was another 20-minute long exercise in frustration and brute force. What's next? Color schemes. What I like about Tetris on the NES is that with every level up where the game gets harder, also the palette changes, which makes for a dramatic moment. The next juicy element was a bit of screen shake to give bombs more oomph. Let's sneak up on past Phil and ask him how he's doing.
Oh, hi. I didn't hear you come in. Anyway, time for a status report. And I'm doing quite well. I spent most of my time today polishing. You can switch through different color schemes, which is nice. A bit of screen shake and some particle effects in there. Next up, it's either making music and sounds or adding lens flares and glow effects, which I really want to do, but Sensible Phil says, no, don't do this and make it a bit more of a game with more sound effects and stuff like that. I'm thinking about adding even a tutorial system, maybe later when I can tackle those text boxes. You would think by now I have a system for text boxes, but no, I code them each time from scratch. Same with the effects. Anyway, let's make some more light and another coffee.
With a celebratory coffee refill, I went after music and sound effects. Unicorns, you gotta make room. I'm sorry. As always, I started Reason and stacked my stalwart 1980s synthesizers for a friendly electropop tune. I look pretty happy here, but that would change. Half an hour later, I had given up. The track just wouldn't come together as I had hoped. I had wasted even more time. The best I could do was salvage the instrument setup for sound effects. Many of them are samples from the iconic Roland TR-808 drum machine for a whiff of nostalgia. Implementing the sounds was the usual game maker-esque tedium, but at least I had that off my chest. I played the game for a bit, methodically on the lookout for the next thing to improve. The obstacles were becoming too numerous, and tweaking the algorithm would take longer than adding bomb pickups. Of course, the new assets also needed new sound effects to go along. The sun started to set around 8, and with 7 hours left, I was fed up with the clumsy logic behind picking chunks. Restructuring this tacked-on system grew increasingly complex and unwieldy the more properties and functionality I piled on. Also, editing the chunks in Notepad++ required some manual processing before they would work in my code. It wasn't as simple as just copy and paste. But I still had 6 hours left. That put me in a dangerous frame of mind, because I contemplated to write a tool to automate that process. As I was about to get started for real, Connie texted, and I left to collect her from work. That short break cleansed my corrupted mind. I mean, making a tool mere hours to the deadline, that's a horrible idea. I added different sets of pieces depending on depth. The further down you make it, the more complex and complicated your pieces get. There's even this set of super odd Cthulhian blocks, but I don't think anyone ever got deep enough to see them, myself included. I still had a bunch of unrealized ideas for the game, and there wouldn't be enough time to cram them all in. I had to prioritize and finish up on the improved handling of the chunks anyway. Yeah, that still wasn't done. A quarter to midnight, that finally worked, and I threw together a game over screen with your final score front and center, the most important aspect of the game. Displaying the statistics the game kept anyway was a cool addition. "45 minutes later, I was forced to take another stab at making music, if I wanted any music at all in my game. I don't know what I did differently, whether it was the stress, the exhaustion, the all-engulfing darkness, or the cold coffee. But that attempt was much better than my first. The music grew dark and driving, and the aggressive synth in the middle suddenly conjured up some mood. Lucky break. But the most fun to compose was the cue that plays when you pause the game. 1 hour remained in the event. And I was in full overdrive mode and polished everything within my grasp, most notably the title screen. Yet again. I had no idea how I wanted it to look, and that clearly shows. When the clock heralded the end of the compo, I had gone too deep into crunch mode again. Submission hour was spent with the usual niceties, taking screenshots, designing an icon, and a title card. A proper tutorial never came to be. My concession was the wall of text in the game's description. And then it was done. I was done. I felt like shit, overworked and super stressed out, despite my best intentions to take things easier. Judging from the comments, the game was received surprisingly well, in spite of its simplicity. Or probably because of it? For the first time since I started making games, I felt that I had successfully come up with actual original mechanics. No matter how much time I feel I have, it's never enough. There's always so much that ends up on the cutting room floor, either by choice or by circumstance. Remember the particle effects that I obsessed over for way too long? Guess what? They never show up in the submitted build, because instead of being rendered on top, they appear behind the background and keep going deeper and deeper. So I got all those stickers printed for the jam, but surprisingly, the theme didn't suck as much. And I'm almost tempted to throw them out. But maybe, just maybe, it's best to hold on to them a little bit longer. This theme didn't suck. A glitch in the Matrix? Perhaps. But who can tell about the next one?